Presbyterian Historical Society is the national archives for the largest Presbyterian denomination in the country, and it's been collecting Presbyterian history and Philadelphia history going back since 1852. The history in this building spans 500 years, so we have items that go back all the way to the Reformation. Beginning a couple of years ago, we started working on a collaboration with Community College of Philadelphia, where students from CCP began coming into the archives and doing primary source research, many of whom had never set foot in an archives or special collection library before. That really predated the protests for social justice that we experienced last year, but that gave added impetus to this work. And the exhibit that is kind of the culmination of the collaboration really shows that. It shows students focusing on historical questions that are highly relevant to them today and to Philadelphia.
The Building Knowledge, Breaking Barriers project was born out of this idea that we wanted to make sure we could build connections with local area students. And from there, we started thinking about what if we allowed the students to design their own exhibit. I actually talked to each student about what they were interested in and what aspect of the records we have in our collections that kind of spoke to something that connects to their own personal interests and stories.
They gave us artistic freedom to take what we know, what we're interested in, look in the archives and turn that into something else, essentially. All the artifacts that are just so fascinating and so beautiful in their history, and once we saw them, we wanted to interact with them, we wanted to touch them because they're first-hand accounts of history, and so get that curiosity, I guess, that we needed to really go in there and look deeper.
We could never have imagined the quality of the work that they've put together to do storytelling that's not only interesting and great looking, but also really insightful and provocative. One of which focuses on the history of a black Presbyterian church that was moved out of this part of Philadelphia over to West Philadelphia. That's a story that also connects with gentrification. Another installation in the courtyard looks at the 6 Calder statues that people know us best because of those statues, but this installation reimagined those statues through the poetry of an African-American leader in the church whose work can be found in the archival collections.
My task essentially was to utilize the statues and find a way to recreate the narrative that they represent. Instinctively, the first thing that I looked for was poetry, and what are the odds I'm going to find an African-American poet in these archives? And so I was shocked that I was able to come across so much valuable information. Betty Dora is a humanitarian. She's done a lot of missionary work all around the world, and she writes choreo poems. And when I came across Colors of the Human Family, it moved me because she wrote that poem in 1982, and it struck me as something she could have wrote yesterday, and it would be just as relevant, it would be just as important. For me, I think my exhibit was intending to say, you can't decide who I am based on my skin color. It represents my heritage, it represents my culture, but it doesn't represent me as a human being. And so I think it's extremely important for exhibits like mine to be able to be shown, and I think that PHS has taken such a huge step, giving us the opportunity to tell our stories the way that we want to tell it.
This is part of an ongoing process for us to change the traditional narratives about who is represented in our collections, for us to really represent the full nature of the American Presbyterian story.
It's important that we bring in new voices, new perspectives, and the students have just done that in an amazing way.
I think that people walking by now may see that there's a different story, and that's going to be extremely important with everything going on in the world.
Hi, I'm Shirley.
And I'm Regina Mitchell. For more videos like this, subscribe to WHYY.